the last couple of weeks we've talked about things that would be pertinent to people who would like to know more about unity before they decide to join. And one of the things we did talk about was our 5 unity principles. We had them on the screen, and there's probably some back in the back on the table. If not, and you want a copy to take home, let me know and I'll make sure you get one. But I just want to go over those 5 unity principles again, because when you say you belong to unity, people are going to start asking you what that means. And what do we think? And how do we think? And because you hear a lot of stuff that's not right about us. So our 5 unity principles: God is absolute good and everywhere present. And as we've learned, the original word for good was Gott. And then Gott became God in the 13th century. And so God is everywhere present. It is an energy that's all good. It's an energy of high vibration and love. And when we come from that place, good comes to us. And all of you have experienced that, so you know what I mean. And when we're in a place where we're not so good, then sometimes the not so good comes to us. So God is absolute good and everywhere present. We don't think God's a guy in the sky. We think that this good vibration is everywhere present, and we can be a part of it or are not. But all humans have the Christ within them. We've learned that the Christ within you means that you have the attributes of the Jesus, of the story of Jesus and who he was. And his attributes were that he was truth, joy, peace, love, and wisdom. All of us have within us these same traits. We all have within us truth, peace, joy, love, and wisdom. We may not be acting from that, but nevertheless, they are a part of who we are. And they are a part of this God love in the universe. But you see, one of the gifts we've been given by the universe is choice and free will. So I get to choose whether I have a happy life or not. I get to choose whether I see goodness in my life, whether I choose to be grateful for what I have. So that choice and free will is a gift, and we have to use it carefully. So that's the second one, that we're all humans, but we do have that Christ within us, and we get to choose whether we use it or not. But when we use it, it comes back to us with good. And the third of the 5 principles is we create our own experiences. We create our own experiences by the activity of our thinking. Everything in the manifest realm, everything you see in this room was a thought before it became manifest into a thing. So we create our own experiences by the activity of our thinking. And everything that manifests and shows up in form in the world began with a thought. Which brings us to the 4th principle, which is prayer and meditation, which kind of keeps us centered when we do prayer and meditation, to make sure that the experiences we create and the thoughts that we think are positive ones, are good ones, are God ones. So this is our 4th principle. So we lean heavily on prayer and meditation to keep us centered in that highest persona or that highest activity of who we were born to be. And the more that we spend time in prayer and meditation, the more that the good comes to us, the more that wisdom comes from us, because we're being guided by that higher power. And in that prayer of that time of prayer and meditation, when we go within, we can ask Spirit or the higher part of ourselves or whoever you choose your good, your God to be, we ask to show us the right choices, to help us make the right decisions. And our fifth unity principle is knowing that the first four principles are not enough. We have to do more than know about them. We have to live by them in our daily lives. And so when we have a day where we welcome new members, one of the things we do is we tell them that being a part of this church and joining, part of it is about living these principles daily in our lives as best we know how. And when we see that we get off, because we're human, we bring ourselves right back on it. And over the years, because remember now, Unity is more than 100 years old, but we've been known for probably almost 100 years as the positive. We're the positive Christianity. And I've had that, I've had people say to me, you people are just too positive. You all are just too happy. I really have had that said to me before. Yeah, ain't it awful? So anyway, I just want to bring all that to you today because we're going to go through really a lot of the basics of what creates unity. And, unity has been called New Thought. How many of you have heard of unity as New Thought and Science of Mind as New Thought? Guess what? It's ancient wisdom. It is ancient wisdom. The first book written about metaphysics was a book called Metaphysica, written 384 years before Jesus was born. It was written by Aristotle. So when somebody says to you, you're in that New Thought thing, no, say, I'm in the ancient wisdom thing. This has been ancient wisdom for more than the time that Jesus was on the earth. So whether you call it New Thought or whether you call it ancient wisdom, it is found in the book Metaphysica, and then after this book was written, Metaphysica was written by Aristotle after he'd written the book Physica. He was a smart guy for a long time ago. So Physica was about physics, which you all know. You guys probably know way more about physics than I do. But Physica was about physics, and metaphysics was described by Aristotle as the first principle of knowledge and the most basic term for describing the universe as a whole. And you know, in this philosophy, when you come here, we talk about this. God is everywhere present. God is all. The whole universe is part. We aren't separate from this universe. We aren't separate from each other. We are a whole body. And the more we can act that way, the greater our experiences are. In his book Metaphysica, Aristotle often referred to metaphysics as theology and divine science. It would be the discipline of religious studies, he said. He believed if we can understand the universe as a whole, which we talk about here, in the most general ways, instead of breaking it up into two separate paths, somewhere along in our history, our thinking got broken up into religion and science. And scientists didn't believe in religion. It was a split personality universe, and it didn't work. And he said, over 2,000 years ago, no, that's a mistake. This needs to be the whole universe. Understand the universe as a whole in the most general ways instead of breaking it up into two separate paths, religion and science. If we can do that, we can have an understanding of God and how God works. Simplification of the definition of the word metaphysics means beyond the physical. And people will ask you, when somebody hears that you go to a church where the Bible is explained metaphysically, they're going to ask you what that means. And it means that there's a meaning beyond the literal. There's a meaning beyond the meaning. And we have to look for it. And that's how the ancients, especially in the East, would teach. They taught in riddles and in mystery, so you'd have to go home and figure it out. But they figured when you learned something like that, you never forgot it, because you had to go home and figure it out yourself. A whole lot different than me talking to you about it and you going home and saying, what was it you said yesterday? So he says there's a whole realm beyond the physical. And Jesus taught us that the universe operates in that realm. He taught us that. And he did it using concise terms, and he illustrated it by his healings, which were beyond the physical, his actions, and his parables. Jesus was a metaphysical practitioner, and it's why he was called a miracle worker. He often did things that were beyond the literal. He applied that understanding of metaphysics to his everyday life, and he taught it to others. Remember, he said to his disciples more than once, "These works I do, greater works than these will you do." But think of the many things that he was attributed to. That he walked on water, that he healed the sick, that he fed the multitudes with a very small amount of money, of food. These were all illustrations of aligning himself with something that was beyond the limited physical realm. We all have that in us. We all have that potential in us. And if you look back at your life, you will find a place in your life where you actually did that and experienced that, because it's in us all. But Jesus was definitely in tune with something beyond the physical in those moments that he was creating those miracles. And in doing that, he taught us how the universe works in according with those universal laws and those universal principles. He taught us by doing, by example. That's what made Jesus such a great, profound teacher, was he didn't just talk about it. He showed us. He showed us by his actions. I think, of course this is just me, but others have thought it too, that Jesus read the books of Aristotle. Because there are many years in Jesus' life that are unaccounted for. From the age of somewhere around 11 to 13, he sat at the knee of the rabbis in the temple. And he would disappear from his parents for days. But they always found him in the temple. And then we read nothing about Jesus in the Bible anywhere until he was 30 years old. So where was he between age 13 and age 30? He was somewhere in the East learning what the Hindus have been teaching for thousands of years. Some of the categories of study in metaphysics are, we'll go into them a little bit more, but when you study metaphysics, we learn the potentiality that we have, the great potential that we all have. We learn about cause and effect. You know it as karma. What I give out comes back. He talked about the absolute and the relative. And Jesus gave examples about how he used all these things in his ministry. You've heard me say many times that we are both human and divine. That's absolute and relative. We are both human, which is relative. We're going to live and die. Things are going to change. We're going to get married. We're going to get divorced. We're going to have kids. They're going to grow up and go away. That's a relative life that we live. That's a human life that we have. And then we have a divine life. And that word means whole. The origin of the word whole and heal were the same thing. So in the wholeness of us being human, we have to learn that we are both relative and absolute. We are both spirit, which is absolute. Our spirit never dies. And we are relative. That part of us that's human that will pass away, that will get sick, that will have changes in their lives. So all of these things are part of the metaphysics of life, and that Aristotle talks about in his Metaphysica. So to be a whole human, we have to live from and honor both our limited physical experiences and our unlimited spiritual self, which has all the power that gives us unlimited potential. When we really truly understand the power that we have in our spiritual nature, in our divine nature, we can do anything we choose. And people do it all the time. They do things all the time that you say, wow, how did he do that? Because he's living in that space of his divinity and the absolute self of who he is. But we humans experience both the physical and the material world and the spiritual of us. So what is the physical material world, and how do we, when we talk about it? It's what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch, and what we feel. Those things are all in our relative physical world. They're all subject to change. And that's why we can't get too upset about change, because if you hang on a little while, it'll change again. So, and we think in our humanness, in our relative humanness, we think that if we can't see it, or taste it, or touch it, or hear it, or feel it, that it doesn't exist. We don't realize that spiritual world is out there, and how huge it is, and how much we're a part of it, and how much it does exist. So in that five-sense experience, that material experience of taste, touch, feel, hear, see, in that five-sense experience, we give that our own meaning. And my meaning of my five-sense consciousness will be different than your meaning of your five-sense material experiences. Does it make sense? That's why it's relative. I may have a terrible experience of something that you thought was really pretty cool, because we get to choose. One of the gifts we were given as human beings is we are given the gift of choice and free will. Now, with all gifts, you can decide how you want to use it, but choice and free will is a gift we all have. And we get to make that choice from moment to moment. No one's doing it to us. God isn't doing it to us. God ain't going to get us out of it. God gave us choice and free will. It's the gift we have. We just have to learn how to use it. So my human experiences are subject to change. Your human experiences are subject to change. And they're different. My experiences are different than yours. Your experiences are different than mine. We just know that in the relative world, it will change. So let's talk a little bit about the absolute. world. These laws never change. So we live in a relative and an absolute world. We've talked about the relative world now. The absolute world never changes. So what is the absolute? Well, think about gravity, mathematics, geometry, aerodynamics. None of those things ever change. 2 and 2 is never going to be 5. You're never going to jump off a building and be perfectly fine. You're going to fall and hurt yourself. Those are absolute laws of our universe. And we have to learn, and most of us have, we've learned how to deal with gravity. We've learned it so well we never think about it. I wouldn't even dream of thinking about it because I already know. Remember we talked last week about the auto-conscious? Well, we're auto-conscious with a lot of the absolutes. When we balance our checkbook, we're in absolute auto-consciousness. We already know the mathematics. We already know the gravity. We already know these absolute laws that never change. And we learn how to accommodate them. We learn how to have them be a part of our life in such a way that we never even think about it. We don't sit down when we have our checkbook in front of us and go, I wonder if 2 and 2 is going to be 4 today or not. I wonder if I'll jump off that building, if I'm going to fall today or not. We don't do that. We already know the absolutes. And I'm making this point with you because the absolutes are what give you your power. We have to learn how to hook into our absolutes. We have to learn, and one of our absolutes that we know very little about, but is crucial to our success, the absolute of the power that we have when we use these universal laws. We already know how to use gravity. We just haven't quite learned how to use quantum physics yet. But when we learn how to use quantum physics, and we do it through prayer and meditation, but when we learn how to use our mind in that way, there's nothing we can't do. We can do anything we choose. We learn how to put that positive vibration out into that quantum field and believe it and know it and not doubt it, and don't ask where it's coming from because you won't know anyway. When you live from that, amazing things happen. And you've all experienced that too. You might not have realized, you might have thought, have you ever had something you said, boy, that was good luck? No, it was something that you had put out into the universe, into that quantum field that came back to you. So the power that we have to learn it, and we have to learn how to use it. It is the key to our success. We have to learn how that law, that quantum physics law, works, just like we had to learn how gravity works. We have to learn it to the degree that we just use it all the time. Are any of you there yet? I'm working on it too. We're all working on it. But quantum physics is one of those absolute laws. It is absolute. It will never change. In biblical days, they knew about it, but they didn't know to call it quantum physics. In biblical days, they called it faith. If you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move a mountain. And that was a teaching. But all they knew how to call it, they didn't know how to call it quantum physics. Science hadn't come along yet. Science didn't come along with quantum physics till 1945. So up until that time, all we knew to say was if you have enough belief and you have enough faith, you can make it happen. It's a lot easier now to say, there's a quantum field out there, and if I put my energy in a positive way into that quantum field, I will get what I want. That's a lot more concrete in our learning and in our acting than being able to, or being, or saying, I'm just going to have faith in that. But they're the same. We just didn't know what else to call it. Today, science knows it's a law. Science knows it's an absolute law. And science knows that this law absolutely works, absolutely all the time. So our job is to learn how to work that, to learn how to use our mind in a positive way so that positive outcomes happen, because we put out vibrations. If you ever walked in a room where everybody was having fun and the vibrations were high and you knew it was going to be great. And then you've walked in other places where you couldn't wait to get out of the room because it was such a heavy experience. We feel each other's energy. That energy does exist. We just have to realize how powerful that energy is, and we have to realize that we have choice about how we use it. So when somebody asks you, what does Unity teach? You can tell them all that. Or say, come with me and find out. So, you know, the point I'm making here too is that today was about metaphysics and about prayer. And so to keep our thoughts positive, keep our words positive, we learn how, I keep rocking this plant and I do not want it to fall. We have to watch our thinking. We have to watch our words. We have to be positive. We have to realize that energetic vibe that we put out. If we put out something that's not positive, we're going to get something back that's not positive. That quantum field is as exact as gravity, or geometry, or aerodynamics, or mathematics, or the musical scale. You don't worry about the scale changing. You already know it's not going to change. It's something in our universe that is absolute. So remember when Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right? He was talking about the quantum field. What I think and what I do is going to be what shows up as a manifestation in my life. So if there's any kind of manifestation in your life you don't like, you can change it. You have the power to change it. You have the power to recognize it as something you don't want in your life. And you can change it. You just have to learn how to use the positivity and the right words and create the right vibes to make it happen. So that's the potentiality. The potential we have is to be powerful beyond means. And that was one of the things that Aristotle talked about, was the positivity. And of course we've also talked about the cause and effect. So whatever we believe is going to be the effect that we get. So I want to leave you with this today. Being positive is a prayer. It's been taught in Unity that every prayer we pray and every word we speak is a prayer. And the more positive our prayers can be, the more positive our words are, the more positive our results will be. And we're all learning this. I'm still learning it too. But just notice. Notice when your thoughts and your words are not positive. Just notice it. Don't beat yourself up about it. But make yourself turn it around right then. Because every word you speak is a prayer. You want to pray, speak positively. So I'm going to leave you with these thoughts. Your thinking affects your vibrations, and that creates the events you experience. If you think small, if you think negative, you create a small vibrational tone that attracts negative things. If you think lack, you're going to vibrate and create experiences of lack. How many of us grew up with parents and grandparents? I did. Talking about lack all the time because they had just suffered and survived 1929 depression. And that has run through several generations. And it has made a lot of us fear lack. But fearing lack brings on more lack. So we want to change that into knowing there is no lack. The lack is only in our belief system. This is a world that is amazing. There's no lack in this world except in our thoughts and our belief system. So if you're in that place of lack or fear and the stock market's going down and oh my goodness, the inflation's going up, stop it at that moment and turn it around. More millionaires got made during the 29 stock fall and depression than has ever been made. It was all right here. So every word you speak is a prayer. Every thought you think is a prayer. Just make yourself remember to do positive thinking and positive thinking, speaking, and positive acting. If you can think prosperity, you will achieve riches and success. That's one thing I want you to remember. If you think lack, you'll create vibrational experiences of lack. And if you think prosperity, you will achieve riches and success. If you think gratitude, you will observe and create more things to be thankful for. The more you can think about gratitude, the more you'll find things to think about around you to be grateful for. You know, I think I've shared with all of you before, but I traveled a lot when I was young, and I traveled a lot of places where there wasn't any hot water, and they were cold places. I never get in the shower in the morning without thanking God for hot water. I mean, that sounds like a small thing, but I have lived through some really cold showers, and it wasn't any fun. So if you can't think of anything to be thankful for, think of that. Think that you have all the hot water you need, and there are 95% of the places around the world that do not. 95% of the places around the world don't have hot water. When I was in Ireland, oh my God, it was so cold in Ireland. And everybody, and they had a living room in the kitchen because everybody had to go in the kitchen where the mother was cooking off the wood stove so they could all stay warm because the rest of the house was ice cold. So we have no idea, and this is Ireland. Ireland's not that, it's a pretty civilized place. They just don't have the means to stay warm. So find something every day to say a positive prayer of gratitude for, or 2 or 3 or 4, or throughout the day. Because we all have so much to be grateful for. I'm really very put out with this civilization we live in the United States. We have so many unhappy people. And we have so much more than the rest of the world, and so much more to be grateful for. And I have no patience with people who are whining and crying and not liking our government and not doing this and not doing that, instead of seeing the positive that we do have. I have a theory. Remember it's old now, but remember the Survivor? Remember when they did the Survivor on TV? Well, a lot of the people that are now having all the complaints today grew up watching Survivor. And do you remember how the survivor would win his $1 million? By cheating everybody else. It was a horrible show. It taught our young people horrible ideas. Now they've all grown up and gone to Congress, and now they all want to cheat it. I'm sorry. I won't get off on the politics. But just to make a point, we just have to remember how powerful our thoughts are, and that every thought we think and every word we speak is a prayer into that quantum field. So this is what Unity teaches, and those of you who are coming here today to become members, now you can go tell them what we teach. It'll only take you 30 minutes. But anyway, we are blessed to have you all here today, and I do want to take us into a bit of a meditation before we move on any further. So just find a comfortable place in your chair, and just think about what's been said today. Think about how blessed we truly are. Let this be a prayer of gratitude. So take a deep breath. And as you breathe, just think about this. No matter the difficulties you are having, no matter the difficulties you have had, you can turn it around. You can give thanks. You can find a way to be grateful that that difficulty is no longer with you, and that things are good, and that as long as you have positive words and thoughts, positive prayers, that you will create good things, happy things, positive things in your life. If there are things that you're dwelling on that aren't so happy, so positive, make a commitment to let that go. Let it go. That negativity no longer serves you. Maybe it did at one point, but it no longer serves you. Let that go. The ways that you are creative and wealthy are the ways that you look to find places that you can give thanks for. The more that we give thanks, the more the good comes. The more you think gratitude, the more you will create more and more things to be grateful for. This is how Unity prays. We don't pray to a God asking. We use positive words. We know the good is on its way to us. We give thanks for our good before we see it, because we know that this is how this universe works. We know that this is a friendly universe. This universe is biased toward good and wholeness and love. And we can embrace it or we can deny it. We get to choose. We could say one positive thing each day. Let it be this: with God, All things are possible. And then remember that God and good are the same word. With good, all things are possible. The more we live from our good and share our good and recognize our good, the more all things possible will show up in our lives. So let us have all of our prayers as positive prayers, as prayers of gratitude, prayers of knowing that all things work together for good, even the things that don't seem to, all things work together for good. And as our daily word said today, remind yourself every day to live from joy, to let joy be part of your life, part of your words. Let the child in you come out. See the goodness in everything and in everyone. And know the more that you do, the more good shows up. And the more you get to say thank you and live from gratitude. God and good are synonymous. With God, with good, all things are possible. Let this be your daily prayer. And so it is. Amen.